You're listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast, the podcast where we delve deeper into landscape business, interviewing legends of the UK landscaping industry. So, join host Nick Ruddle as he explores their thoughts, insights and experiences. That's here on the Grow Landscapers podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Grow Landscapers podcast. I'm Nick Ruddle and today we're joined by yet more landscape royalty, Mr. David Dodd, or Doddsy, from the Outdoor Room. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Nick, and thank you for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Now, you're someone who's vastly experienced and extremely well known in the industry, and looking at the amount of awards you've won is no surprise. So just how many awards is it now?
We're on to our 12th gold medal for Chelsea. We've got around 25 other RHS medals from Hampton Court and other shows. And we've got 11 Barley Awards, 4 principals. But our greatest accolade, now we're only chasing now because we finally won Best in Show for the Guangzhou Garden, which was designed by Grant Associates last year. 2021. Yeah. The only September show there was at Chelsea. We won Best in Show, so that was it for me. That was the biggest accolade we've ever received.
Wow, it's a phenomenal list. Must be. I can't think there's too many other people that have won more Chelsea or more RHS awards than yourself. I know that Mark at Landform done about 107 Chelsea Gardens.
Oh, he's like, yeah. I mean, it's just always good to see him there. Chelsea, yeah. You know, is a great asset to the industry, and particularly show gardens as well.
Yeah, and a good mate of yours.
I think everyone's only ever going to be chasing Mark, aren't they, for numbers?
Yeah, well, if you're chasing him, you're not going to be too far. You're not going to be doing too badly, are you? Anyway, as you know, I've been stalking you for a while to get you on the show, so thanks so much for your time. Welcome. Let's get cracking, shall we? So let's go back to the early years. Where did it all start, and how long have you been in the industry?
It started as I was the black sheep of the family, out of 3 children. So both parents were teachers. My brother is now a priest at Canterbury Cathedral. My sister was she's actually Kate Cooney from Perennial. So, but she was sort of like high flying businesswoman for Reed, and then I signed up for the Navy because I didn't think that I could get a proper job or a real job. Wow. And then while I was waiting for my release papers to be signed, there was the '87 storm, and so I was fascinated by seeing what nature can do. And my sister sorted me out, Kate sorted me out a job with Reed Employment, and it was clearing up in Putney after the storm at a college, Whitelands College. And I absolutely loved it. And it was a Polish head gardener, Yanis, and I just adored working for him. And he started to teach me about plants and about lawn care and pitch care. And I just remember going home and saying, I'm not joining the Navy now, I want to be a gardener.
Brilliant. So a real passion for that. You just found what you should do in life, your vocation in life.
I had an apprenticeship at Chessington Zoo, as it was then. It then became World of Adventures. Yeah. Went to Worcester Park Nurseries, worked for F. Giles in Epsom, and it was just learning. And then that was the point where I said, do you know what? I want to do this properly. I want to learn this properly. And I got into Merris Wood. Yeah. And in those days, that was 1989. In those days, I had I scraped together 7 O-levels, which I thought I was doing all right. But I didn't have maths. And in those days, Merris wouldn't let you in without maths.
Wow.
And so I had to sit that privately to do, it was GCSE. I can say I've got a GCSE. I actually got GCSE French when I was 32 as well. But I had to do GCSE maths to get into Merris Wood. And then it was the happiest time. Finally, I hated school. It's a very strict all-boys grammar school. And for the first time, I couldn't wait to get to college because I was finally learning something that I was interested in.
Yeah, and motivation.
And then when I became a teacher, I started teaching at Merris Wood, and both my parents were like, "Oh, this is the greatest news ever. You're finally a teacher." and then I remember bumping into an old headmaster, and bearing in mind I was threatened to be expelled about 3 times, and he said, I can't believe you're a teacher.
Yeah.
So that was it, and it was just that passion of not only gaining knowledge. I mean, they say, you know, every day is a school day in landscaping, but actually having that passion to then pass on that knowledge is just as satisfying.
And here you are again, sharing that knowledge for others, for other people's benefits. Brilliant. So it's obviously in your blood to want to help other people. And this is why we're here today, I suppose. And I know that you've got a really good story to tell, lots of great insights. So what made you go into business then in the first place?
I think I started teaching. I went to Greenwich Uni to do the B.Ed in education. So became a qualified teacher. And then the whole politics of Merriswood, and I think a lot of colleges, changed. And they started to reduce the contracts, and they offered me a job as a practical instructor. So I was being stripped of lecturer status. And I just said, I can't afford to do this. And so I was my father had just died, and I was slightly forced into, my wife was pregnant. She was just about to have our first kid. And I said, I've got a mortgage. What am I going to do? So I felt slightly forced into having to go out and earn. And I remember the early days, I had a couple of jobs here and there. I remember mixing up concrete by hand because I couldn't afford a mixer. I had a beaten up old pickup. Friends were helping do a bit of labouring where I needed it. And it really was sort of scrabbling around, writing, getting leaflets printed down at Pontyprint, offering lawn care and landscaping services. So it was literally doing leaflet drops door to door.
Yeah.
And you picked up a bit there. And then gradually, you get a bit of fortune, you get a good client, they recommend you. And then before, you know, about a year later, you then go, actually, we're getting quite busy.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, I think it found me rather than, I never intended to go self-employed, but I think I always had that slightly entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real driving factor as to whether or not, I don't think it's for everyone. I think the industry has got far too many one-man band self-employed people. And I think if the industry was more respected, which I think the organisations are really improving, the kudos of being a landscaper and it being recognised as a serious career, I think this is going to force salaries up. It's going to, you know, and I think a lot of people might be a better option for them working for a larger company, an organisation, rather than just hundreds of or even thousands of one-man bands.
Yeah.
You know, I think some people are actually better off working for companies. It's not for everyone, you know, owning a company.
Yeah, if you work for a proper company, you know, that's run well, you know, you can be developed, you can be, you know, you can progress your career, can't you? Because you've got the right people, the right systems, the right foundations in place. And I think if you're serious about progressing, then you'll progress well in that kind of company with that kind of support. But yeah, the one-man bands, I don't think they're set up for it. They probably don't necessarily have the business knowledge on you know, to develop people, you know, in their careers.
Yeah, I mean, you learn as you go along, I think, with business.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, what have I learned from that experience? What have I learned from this experience? How can I do that job more efficiently?
Yeah.
But I think when there are some people who those constant mistakes actually just drives them. You know, we've got one of our senior foremen. He went off for 2 or 3 years, and he wanted to have a go himself. And he came back and he just said, no, I want the stability of you know, being employed, and you know, he knows what money's coming in every month, etc., etc. And he was spending weekends and evenings doing the quotes because he, and I don't think he had the drive or the, I wouldn't say know-how, but he said, I don't want to expand. So he just wants to landscape. Yeah. And trust me, I'm very jealous of some of my staff. Not on days like this, it's absolutely tonking it down out there. Yeah. But I think I'm very jealous that I'm not on the tools as I used to be. And that was, and when I am, my wife always used to say when I got home, she said, you've been on site today, haven't you? And I said, how do you know? She goes, because you're happy.
Wow. Yeah. That's the thing, is that you start landscaping because you love landscaping, but in order to build the business, you can't be on the tools, can you?
Yeah.
You've got to go into the office, and it's probably not why a lot of people go into running a landscape business for themselves in the first place. But it evolves, isn't it? And you have to, because otherwise there's no work, or you can't really develop the business if you're on site, if you're not working.
Pearl of wisdom number one, then, Nick.
Yeah,
Work on your business, not in it.
absolutely. It's a very,
I'll
very
let you have that one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a very common one, that, isn't it? Because I think the chap that coined that phrase was Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth, and in
Oh.
I think 1975, he wrote the first version of that. So it's been going for over 45 years now.
I thought I invented that, Nick.
No, well, you're a wise man too, aren't you? So you obviously know your stuff. But it's true, because if you're working in your business, a lot of these people you're describing there, they're one-man bands. They work in the business, but the set of skills you need as a brilliant garden, a gardener, a landscaper, or a garden designer, a totally different set of skills to those of running a business. How to build a business, sales, marketing, leadership, how to systemize, all those kind of things are a whole different subject to being a great landscaper. Running a great landscape.
It was also difficult initially for me, letting go of, no, I know how I want that built. I know the quality and the standard I want.
Yeah.
How am I going to instill that into my staff?
Yeah.
And I think you can. And it's a case of, and then when you've got one foreman, who's driving that quality, I think that actually pulls new staff up. Yeah. And we've got a new member of staff who's worked for quite a close rival company. He started 4 months ago, and he said he's learned more in 4 months than he has in the previous 4 years at his old company.
Wow.
And he said, I can't believe the standards the outdoor room are requiring of me. He said, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
He said he's really, really happy to push on, and he's a good landscaper. But it's sort of, I was looking at some of his work, I was going, I don't want that. I was out on site just for a meeting. I said, I don't want that doing that. I don't like the way those trees have been staked. This is how I want it doing. Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, And so if you've got the new staff willing to learn, and you can let go of that role. And I think some of the guys, things like paving, brickwork, stone, they're better than me now anyway. I don't think I could go. I just go out and do the odd bit of labouring if I'm needed.
Expensive labour, I would imagine. Yeah, well, I think the key is to recruit people that are better than you, because if you get involved, you make things worse. So you want
something like that.
Then they won't allow you on site, which is probably a good thing. But good stuff. Already some good lessons in there. So working on the business rather than working in the business. People should take note of that if they're not doing that already, or work out a way of how you progress from working in to working on. So what does the business look like? Well, what did it look like when you actually started? I mean, is it just a van? Was it you and a mate? Did you have a load of tools?
Well, as I said, I scraped some money together, bought a beaten up old Toyota Hilux 4x2.
Yeah.
And loved that. Had the column gears on it. And I had that. I had a few hand tools. Luckily, I still got on very well with the old technician at Merris Wood in the workshop. So I was always popping in there saying, oh, is there any chance of borrowing a whacker plate? Is there any chance of borrowing a mixer? Yeah. And he's going, yeah, make sure you bring it back though. And so I borrowed tools. I had to hire tools. And then the only thing, I knew how to do it, but it was just having the resource to actually do it. And then the jobs were getting bigger. I thought, I can't just ask my next door neighbour. No. I had a mate who was a fireman. So he used, when he wasn't on shift, he would come and work for me. I thought, I'm actually going to need, and I had a guy, an ex-student of mine from Merris Wood. He came to work for me. He's now a landscape architect in Hong Kong. Wow. So he's gone on to bigger and better things. I then had Gavin Barrett. He was in the same year. He came to work for me when he finished at Merris Wood. He finished his course. And Gavin's still with me now.
Wow.
So he's that's 27, 28 years this year.
Oh, he's loyal.
He's worked for me for. So he's done brilliantly. He's now head of maintenance.
Yeah.
So he's moved a few roles from senior foreman to he came into the office. He was like a caged animal in the office. He hated it. Yeah. And then but our development of maintenance. I've never really done maintenance seriously, but that side of the business started to grow, and he's still growing as well. And he now runs that.
Yeah, brilliant. So what does it look like now then? So what does the outdoor room look like now?
So we're moving offices later on this month. So we bought Pots and Pithoi, and we moved in here. And already the outdoor room has outgrown the office space we have here.
Yeah. So
it's the old Rusper golf course we're moving to. We've got the whole upstairs of what was the clubhouse. It's all been completely renovated and restored. Brilliant. So huge new offices. We've still got the yards, got the 9-acre yard there. We've got 14 vehicles, all personalised number plates on the vehicles. So going from my first beaten up old Hilux to a whole new fleet. We've got 4 new vans on order. So yeah, and lots of, whereas I was borrowing stuff, it's now just a case of, oh, we need a new whacker plate, can you go and buy one? And you know, the whole computer systems has been streamlined, and yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so a far cry from where you started, and brilliant achievement. I mean, when you look back,
I think you appreciate it. You know, I never take anything for granted, even now. Never take anything for granted. And when people sort of say, oh, you know, I'm just a one-man band, I was going, don't ever belittle what you do.
Yeah.
Always, you know, anything can change. And trust me, I mean this, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's just a case of you know, if you've got to want that drive, and you've got to need it. If you're not sure, then I always say to people, ask yourself, soul search, ask yourself, you know, why, not just I want to do it, why do you want to do it? Money, is that a driving factor?
Yeah.
Respect, kudos, I don't know what drives me. I think the older I've got, one thing I would say, certainly the older I've got, the less interested I am in money now. Yeah. I know what I like. I like going to the pub. How much is a pint? You know, I like going for a curry. I like my fine wine and fine dining, but I don't do it every night. But I you know, I've got quite simple tastes.
Yeah, I think once you've ticked the box of, you know, the finance box, and that's not a, you know, a major thing, and that's all settled, then it's the simple things in life, really, I think, isn't it? And making sure that you're healthy as well. Obviously, yeah, if you haven't got your health, you haven't got anything, have you? So health, family, and all the other stuff comes off the back of that after that.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, then. So here's a big question. What do you think the most important elements are to running a successful business in the landscape industry?
Ooh.
Where'd you start with that
one? Number one, being honest.
Brilliant.
I think be honest with your staff. Be honest with your clients. If something's not going to happen or something's gone wrong, don't try and cover it up. Don't try, I won't swear, don't try and BS them. You know, there's absolutely no point. And if you're upfront with people, I think that, you know, we had a bizarre scenario last year where the developers and the main contractors were in this huge sort of £14 million refurb in West London. And this was and the house is a completely empty shell. And the project manager saying, oh yes, the clients are moving in April. And I went, no, they're not. And everyone sort of turned around and stopped and stared at me. And I was going, don't be ridiculous. I said, you've got about a 2-year build here.
Yeah.
And it's just constant, like, telling the clients what they want to hear isn't always the best policy. No. Tell them the truth, and I think you actually gain more respect, and they'll look to turn towards you more if they want the honest answer. That's what I've found. But again, I also think be honest to yourself. Know your limitations. I think if you're kidding yourself, people will see through it, and there's absolutely there's no point in that. I think the second one would be, so it's about honesty. I think the second one would be, don't overgear your business. If you're trying to build your business up and you want it to be successful, don't take it. So I wouldn't take on a multi-million pound contract. That's not what the outdoor room does. We would take stuff on up to 2.5, 3 million, but I wouldn't take on a 14 million pound, public contract. I wouldn't know how to. No. I think, and you can put that on every level. If you're used to doing gardens 25, 30,000 pounds at a time, I would question whether or not you would be prepared to take on a project of 100,000 pounds, 200,000 pounds. I did that back in 2005, so we've been going for about 10 years, and I think the biggest job we'd done was about 50 or 60k, and we did one for 150. Lost a lot of money on it, but it was a very heavily publicised garden, and it took us 9 months to do 150 grand. I'd go mad if a 150 grand job took 9 months now. But it was a case of what I learned from it, and how would I do that again? Fortunately, it didn't bankrupt me. And we learnt so much. The next job we did was about 80, 90,000, so smaller but still of a significant amount, and we absolutely smashed it out of the park. It's efficient how it was organised, how it was run, and therefore I say what I lost financially on that first big job we did, I've had that paid back 100 times over. Priceless lessons, painful, but priceless. It was at the time. Didn't know whether or not I could pay the guys. It's but having a word again, going back to honesty, having a word with them, saying, look, boys, we're losing a lot of money on this. I'm going to ask you, would you do some overtime at weekends? Can I pay you, when we, get some money in and this? And they were great. All of them said, yeah, no problem. Let's get, because it was a beautiful job. And still on our website. All those years later. Loved it. Amazing. Very good. Anything else? Any other important elements before moving on? Good cash flow. When you're doing a project, I think it's really important to, 50% up front and 50% on completion that just doesn't work. That's a ridiculous way of getting the money. You have too much upload and then but that soon runs out. And if things start to go wrong, and you've got bad weather for a couple of weeks, or staff goes off sick or whatever, things are held up, and you're not going to get paid until that job's finished. We sort of break it down in T's and C's. I like JCLI, I like valuation, monthly valuations, because you're getting paid for what you've done. But I also, the other one is, I think we do about 5 or 6 payments varying between 20 to 15, 20, 10%, whatever, and they're done in percentages like that. But like I say, small and often is better than big chunks at the beginning and at the end. Well, it's manageable for the client, manageable for you, helps you to manage your cash flow better. And cash is the oxygen of business, isn't it? Without it, you die. So we can do. Good. Okay. Brilliant. Well, look, some great positives there, some things you need to put in place to have a successful business. But you've touched on it already. What are the biggest mistakes, or what are the biggest lessons you've learned then in all your years of being in business? Work-life balance. I know you said to me before we came on about not necessarily seeing your kids grow up. No, how painful. No, and they resent it to this day. No, they don't. They're lovely. It was funny enough because I sort of never saw the older ones growing up. Sam now runs Pots and Pithoi, so I have to see him every day now. So he's doing that, and then but Max is doing well. But the 2 eldest ones, I was never there. It was work, and then if I had a bit of time off, it was. I'm sorry to say, it makes me sound awful, but it was Palace. and that was
When
my
you say
release.
palace, this is Crystal Palace.
It's for my sins. It is
What a
Crystal
waste of time
Palace,
that was.
So, and yet you'd have thought if I'd had some leisure time, the last thing you'd want to do would be go and watch Palace play.
Yeah, you want to enjoy yourself.
But there you go.
Yeah.
Very, very supportive wife. She's been wonderful. She's a midwife, but she's been wonderful, supporting me, and she still is. So but I think that work life balance. I'm now in the process of trying to buy time back. And I think if I could go back 30 years ago, I would have done it so differently. And I think I was too scared not to provide for my family, and therefore I just said yes to everything. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap. I was too scared of I've been in situations where we've had no work. Now, if you're self-employed, no work, no money. It's that simple. So I just said yes to everything, and I think that was a big mistake. And I think actually take enough for what you need. Don't try and grab it all. And actually, life and quality of life is worth a lot more. But holidays. I always used to get ill on holiday because I was so stressed.
Wow.
We'd have 2 weeks in the summer and that was it. But now, I have to do a lot of business trips to Crete, so find the pot. So that's a hard. Someone's got to do it.
Job. Oh yeah, you take the can for that. Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it?
But that's that. The other thing, mistakes wise, is I know we briefly talked about the sad loss of Gianluca Vialli, but I think the greatest quote I heard from him was you either win or you learn.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we're constantly learning in business. And I think if you don't win a tender, don't be a salty bitch about it. You get on and you find out why you didn't win that tender, and you actually start to learn from things like that. Ask for, well, what were the comparable prices? What could I have done differently to have won that job? So don't just sort of sulk and throw your toys out of the pram. Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, well, one of the famous stories about that, non-landscape related, Thomas Edison, when he was inventing the light bulb, he apparently everyone thought he was mad. He'd failed so many times, and they said to him, "Look, how comes you've tried 12,000 times or whatever the story is, to invent this thing?" And he said, "No, I've not failed. I've not failed. I've just found 11,999 ways of how not to make a light bulb." Because every in inverted commas failure was just taking in that closer to success. And I think you've got to fail. If you're not willing to fail, you're not doing enough. You're not pushing hard enough. You're not trying. You're not pushing the boundaries enough. And there's always a lesson. And next time, maybe you get a better result, or the time after that. But if you keep, trying, you're going to eventually find the right way. But if through like your podcast and other people's podcasts, people can learn from the mistakes, it just helps increase the progress, so that they don't have to go through those really painful lessons that can be either costly in terms of money, time, relationships, energy, mindset, and then just sort of burn out. So if we could sort of skip some of those by brilliant advice from yourself and other people we've had on here, then that's what this show's all about. So it's interesting you say about your work-life balance. Money can be made and spent and made again, but once you spent your time, it's gone forever.
It's gone.
And it's never coming back, So I think they're important sort of principles to live by and to remember. Good. So okay then. So have you got top 3 tips on how to improve your efficiencies or profitability of a company that you've known from all your experience?
Oh, well, this is something I think my number one here, Nick, would be something I've only really started to learn the last 2 or 3 years. And a friend of mine is a very, very successful wine merchant, a company called Far Vintners. And, I turn over tens of millions of pounds a year. And I was talking to him, he's a Palace fan, that's how we're such good friends. And I was talking to him, they never have meetings.
Right.
And it's quite an interesting one how his company runs. But they say, we don't have meetings. We just talk and we'll say, well, I'm doing this. And, and Steve might say, well, don't do that, do this, do it like this. But they never sit down and have formal meetings. It's a complete waste of time. Yeah. And I think our problem is that some people are obsessed with having to have a meeting. And I think that, and last year, I got dragged up to a project to be told by the designer and the project manager that we weren't doing the slot drain. And I said, so I've just spent 50 quid on a train fare to come up to London because you said you needed a meeting. Yeah. And so I came and I said, I've had to sit there in this meeting, listen to what the plumber's doing and listen to what the electrician's doing. And my whole role when it came to landscape was, we're not doing the slot drain, the main contractors. Yeah. I said, that's an email. Yeah. I said, that's a phone call. So I think my top tip would be reduce meetings that aren't necessary. Yeah. Establish what the purpose of the meeting or the discussion is, and can it be resolved via quick chat like we're doing, Zoom or FaceTime, anything like that, but save time on, because you've got to remember that designers, architects, project managers, quite often they're getting paid by the hour, so they love a meeting. Of course they do. Yeah. Now, if you're on a fixed price tender, it's you ain't getting paid by the hour. No. And so therefore, I always say, we like I say, if it can be resolved more efficiently, do it. Don't do meetings for the sake of meetings. I think look at the location of projects. We always joke saying we'll work anywhere in the world apart from North London. So, and that's you as a Tottenham fan.
That's a bit painful. Spurs don't blame you though. It's a bit. It's like Harlem up there. It's like the Bronx, isn't it? It's not
the reason is going back to saying I used to say yes to everything. It's just time efficiency, and it also drives the staff. It lowers the staff morale. Oh, we're doing this job. We haven't got accommodation because it was a tender, so we had to be competitive. Yeah. By the way, you're going to be sat in a van for 5 hours a day. Yeah. Yeah. They're not going to want to do it. They're not going to want to drive for 2.5, 3 hours in the morning.
It does.
And then just sort of they're sort of like knackered by the time they've got to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's I always say careful with your location of work. And the other one, I just did a recent talk for the SGD, and it was ensure designers are producing the correct documents for tendering. Right. So it's not your job to work out how that garden's going to be built. It's a case of, I don't want to be spending days or weeks on a quote, because that's not your job. They should be producing a bill of quantities. So try and ensure that you've got all the correct information to make your time in pricing it as efficient as possible. And again, don't get, you could be out, if you are a small company or still a one-man band, you don't want to be up till 2, 3 in the morning pricing jobs. You want to be out on site and actually, got to do a quote tonight. It's going to take me a couple of hours. Or it's going to take me a couple of evenings to produce this quote. That's fine, but you don't want to be spending weeks of time working out how it's going to be built. So it's making sure you've got the correct drawings, correct documentation, that it can easily be priced.
Yeah, well, time is money, isn't it? And it's time away from family as well, isn't it? And seeing your kids.
Yeah.
So you got to value your own time. I think when people, like the example you said earlier about going all the way down there, spent 50 quid on the train just to be told something that could be done over an email. Those kind of people don't value their own time, therefore they don't value other people's times. And that's.
I think they do value their time because they're paid hourly.
Depends who they are, but generally speaking, when people are wasting your time, you look at them and you think, well, they probably don't really value what their own time is worth to their business.
Yeah.
And they don't see it that way. But when it starts encroaching on your family time, that's a bit of a red flag, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So what parts of being in business have you found the most rewarding then for you personally?
It sounds a bit cliche-ish, but I would say it's the awards. Yeah. And we never used to enter awards, and I'll always remember the first one we ever entered was I did Chelsea as a student at Merris Wood. I mean, people forget that, Merris Wood historically had 12 gold medal show gardens because it was part of the syllabus.
Right.
But so I did it as a student, but we never did show gardens when I first set the outdoor room up. We never did, we weren't members of Barley because I was sort of like, well, what do I need to be a member of an organisation for? I know how good I am a landscaper. It's so I don't need that recognition. But then actually, it's more the point we did join Barley. I mean, and the benefits of being a member, of being for support and again, that networking opportunity has been phenomenal. So I would highly recommend it. But the other thing I would say, if you enter the awards, that's not for my ego. Well, it is a little bit, but it's more a case of it's showing the guys and the staff what they're doing day in, day out.
It's their work.
It's actually being recognised on such a huge platform.
Yeah.
And again, that goes for show gardens as well as Barley Awards.
Yeah.
And it's more a case of, do you know what? You've done such an amazing job. You've won an award.
Yeah.
I think I've been up on stage once to collect a Barley Award, and other than that, I always want the foreman to go up, or whoever's project managed it, because it's about them.
Yeah.
And it's a case of, and it gives them the insight. They want to do it again, and they're scrapping over who's going to be doing what gardens at Chelsea, who's going to be doing the best projects, which might win an award. And we don't enter every year.
Yeah.
And so when we do enter for a Barley Award, it really does have to be a special one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think some companies just enter willy-nilly for the sake, then they just pick the best of what they've done that year. But, I just think actually, we haven't done anything. We've done some brilliant gardens this year, but none of them I don't think are worthy of a Barley Award.
Yeah.
And I actually hold a Barley Award. Saying the greatest thing that's ever happened to me was winning Best in Show at Chelsea.
Yeah.
I actually still hold a Barley Award as a higher status than I do an RHS medal, only because it's permanent.
Yeah.
Show gardens at the end of the day are show gardens.
Yeah.
But Barley Awards are real gardens.
Yeah, yeah, and so competitive, isn't it? So competitive to win those.
Yeah.
So just touching on the Barley thing.
Fun.
Yeah, absolutely, it's great fun. But touching on the Barley thing, I know that you're one of the co-founders of Go Landscape. Is that right?
Oh, with Nigel Bocock.
You and Nige?
And I love Nige.
Yeah,
it was great fun. Very difficult. I mean, the industry. So I got elected onto the board. And it was a case we were like the two naughty boys in the boardroom.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But then they stuck us in charge of education, and he's now chairman.
Yeah,
and I think is very worthy of chairman as well. It's Barley been blessed with some really good chairmans recently over the last few years. So, but Nigel and I, and we were saying, well, how are we going to do this? And we thought, do we go into schools and colleges? So we need. I said, first thing I need is to take this seriously. This is a full-time job for the whole department, not just a part-time job for us two. No, and, we sat down and it took us, and we would come up with ideas, and you'd go and present to the board, and it'd be like, we were getting beaten up all the time saying, well, is this what's happened? Is that what's happened? So we said, well, we need a full-time education officer. So we got a full-time education officer, Steve Ensel, who's sadly just left. Yeah. But it was so difficult encouraging people at school careers events, because you're up against the police, the army, accountants, the banks, what I would say grown-up jobs, and we're saying no. Look, landscaping, we need people of every walk of the caliber of life. We need people with degrees. We need people with PhDs. But we also we can accommodate people from any background, any sex, any background, any ethnicity. There's something for everyone, but getting young people. The schools now are driving so much. We've got Rishi telling us we've all got to become mathematicians now. And what about art? What about music? What about creative subjects?
Life skills.
And this is what I would tell kids at careers events. They say, what qualification should I be going for? I said, maths and English are always useful. Geography, funny enough, science is useful. I said, but be creative. If you like art, study art. If you like music, study music. Study those creative subjects, and you're going to get all those juices flowing into a creative industry. And that is exactly what we are. We are creating places of beauty. So anyway, Nigel and I, yes, we did found it together, and he was great. I mean, I stepped down. He carried on pushing it. Jake, Catlin has done a great job, and he's been really supportive of Go Landscape. He's now a director, and I think, yeah, it's in good hands. But it is so difficult, Nick. Just getting and getting that message across, because again, schools want to encourage people to stay on and do their A levels, because that gets their percentages up and points up from the funding purposes, and we've got X number. But so you're banging your head against a brick wall, and it's a case of educating the public and saying landscaping is a professional career. Yeah. And do not think of it as a second-rate job. I still call myself, when I have to fill out a form or something, and it says, what's your occupation? I'm like, I don't know. But I still write landscape gardener. And I use those words because I think horticulture is being taken away too much from the landscape industry, in the sense of, and I blame the RHS for this, and the presidents of we've got the landscapers are just hard landscapers. It's not. You're a landscape gardener. You should study construction, and you should study horticulture.
Yeah, it's the trouble with the school system, the scholastic system. Things don't seem to change, because the people that make the decisions have been through and bought into that scholastic system, and they're sort of programmed to just keep that conveyor belt going. Whereas there's so many other great things to do. I'm always baffled and surprised when I hear people like yourselves and Wayne Grills say, we struggle to get people in the industry, and everyone says the same thing. I think a lot of the people on the show have said that, and it baffles me really, because for me it just seems like another brilliant industry to be in, and you're not stuck in the office. You're out in nature. You're keeping yourself fit, and you're creating things. I just find it quite hard to understand, or to see why people wouldn't be attracted to it personally.
The most soul-destroying thing I ever heard, having 4 kids, and there's 10 years between the eldest and the youngest, asked all of them. I said, why did none of you want to become in landscape? Sam followed me, but he went to Merriswood, but he then dropped out. And I said, why don't you, at school, why didn't any of you think about following me into landscaping? And they said, and go to Brinsbury or go to Merriswood, and said, that's where they send the thick kids. And he said, you are labelled if you go, but it's not just landscaping, it's trade. If you go in, and so therefore, there's this element of thick kids go and become a plumber, thick kids go and become a bricklayer, thick kids go and become a landscaper. And therefore it is still regarded at their age. Now that's only coming from schools. Totally. And the idea that they're being labelled at this, and you go to Brinsbury, and they said that's where they send the special needs kids.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? It's just crazy. It just surprises me. I mean, I'm not directly in the industry, but always does sort of make me scratch my head as to why
we need to change the mindset of the public as to what landscaping actually is.
But that's what I love about this Go Landscapes, and so Go Landscape, helps with the skills and gets people into the industry, and helps the operational people become better at being better landscapers. Whereas what I do with companies is try and get the business owners of landscape companies to upskill to where the levels that they were at operationally, if you know what I mean. Because if you're running a landscape business, as we said, they're 2 totally different skill sets for doing a project, installing a project, and running a landscape business. So I think the two for business owners are hand in hand, because you start off with great landscaping skills and knowledge, but then I think there's also something missing in terms of how do you then help people to grow a successful, profitable landscape business. And that's why I set this podcast up, really, to help people get that knowledge, learning from the best of the best, like yourself and all the other guests, so that they do have the belief that actually this could be a really successful business, and they could make and create a great life for themselves and their families. But I think having the two things, you've got to have the education on both sides, the operational stuff and the business stuff. Anyway, interesting. I could talk to you all day long, but we've got limited time. So I've got a couple of other questions for you before I let you go on your merry way. If you've got someone who is in that situation and they're a bit stuck at the moment, and they want to expand their business, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge or know what to do, what would you say to someone? What advice would you give to someone in that situation?
Soul search, and be careful what you wish for. If they're stuck and they want to expand, I would say ask around. Question, I've said it before, Nick, why? Ask yourself, why do you want to do this? Yeah. I would speak to the bank as well, which is very difficult to do these days since no one seems
or other alternative investors, lenders. There's
and be careful. Make sure that, because I've been in situations where the banks have said, oh well, actually I've gone on and said, oh, I need to borrow £400,000, and they said, actually we've checked your rating and you can borrow up to £1 million. Well, I don't want £1 million. Don't borrow what you don't need.
Yeah.
It's a case of ask yourself why you want the money. But I think if you're, like we said, cash is king. So I would always say ensure that the market is right for you. Yeah. Listen to the news and, we're going into recession, this and recession that. Well, actually, we've sort of talked about that, the last few months. We could be going into recession. But actually, it's the first time the outdoor room's ever been booked up for over a year.
I know.
And so I'm going, do I listen to the news or do I just keep going? And actually keep going. And if you know the market's right for you, you've got the good contracts. You've got the good contracts which are right for you, not you. You haven't just done my biggest mistake and just said yes to everything. Yeah. Then you know the time is right. And you should have a gut instinct that it's time. Actually, I need to push on. I need to push on. I need this. Don't go out and buy a fleet of brand new vans and hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of new tools. That's not going to get the work done. No. It's going to make you look flash.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not going to get the work done. You need to be turning those jobs into profit. And you need to know that you're in the right place. And you can say, actually, if I do this and this goes wrong, always have a contingency. If something goes wrong, what are you going to do if something goes wrong on one of those projects? Are you financially stable enough to be able to carry that through? What's your risk element of something going on? If you're not asking yourself those questions, then you really shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. I know people who have just bankrupted themselves and said, oh, actually, it wasn't working out. I've gone bust, this, that, and the other. I have to say, I sound really ruthless here, and it's not the case for everyone, but I haven't got a lot of sympathy for them. Because I said, well, did you ever ask if something went wrong? You say that, but that could have happened at any time. Yeah, but I took a gamble. Well, don't gamble.
Yeah. Calculate
risk, but don't gamble.
Yeah. On Mark Gregory's podcast, he says one of many things that stood out on that, his role, he said, is all about risk management. His role is, I just assess risk, and I'm very good at assessing risk. Same as what you just said there, and taking responsibility for that. Okay, very, very good. Final question. Let's maybe have one or two golden nuggets for someone who's trying to build their business. If you had one or two golden nuggets, you probably mentioned some of them along the way today, but
yeah, I think I have. I would say the biggest golden nugget, and I've said this already, Nick, I know, learn to say no, learn when to say no.
Yeah.
And you'll have people pushing you and pushing you and pushing you to do a job. And it's you either can't do it in a time frame they want. Oh, okay, I can get it started, but then you just end up with sleepless nights because you've got another 5 or 6 jobs on the go at the same time. So don't learn to say, look, I just can't do it. It might be distance. Oh, but we really, really want the outdoor room. We really want you to do this job. Well, yeah, but it's in Birmingham. We're in Sussex. And I've had that, and you sort of get all the guilt. Learn to say no. I think that's the most important thing. Choose the right projects. I think I can't remember the order it was said in, but John Wyatt, I've always found as one of the most inspirational people in the industry.
Yeah,
I think what John has he said, every project they have a 3-point evaluation, and it was is the project going to make money?
yeah.
Is the project going to enhance his company's reputation or his own reputation? And thirdly, is it going to be fun?
Is it fun? Yeah, yeah.
You should enjoy going to work.
Yeah.
And I've always hung on. I remember listening to him speak, and I always remember I hung on to that pearl of wisdom. And I think he's absolutely right. And if you've got all three, then that's your golden ticket, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he said you've got to go for at least 2 out of those 3 to see whether or not the project's right for you, or if the project's right for your company.
Makes sense. Get excited about it then, can't you? And be fully committed to it.
Yeah, and again, like I say, it's making sure that the environment is right for you as well. Your market you're in the right market. Don't overgear. Make sure that every job you're doing, stretch yourself by all means. Yeah. And I think that you've got to push yourself, because I think if you're not pushing yourself, you'll go stagnant. And it's like, if you're not driving your business forward, then it's only going to start to go downhill.
It does.
You might level out for a bit, but then you're going to start to slide backwards. So you do have to keep pushing, but it's doing it in the right measures. And it's you've got to ensure that, can you actually do this job? I mean, you talk about Mark Gregory. An interesting one for us was we were asked to do the Jubilee Garden for the Tower of London. Yeah. And we had the meetings with them, and I just said, no, it's too big for us. Too big for us, and the time frame we can't do it within your time frame. Yeah. And it was 2 projects which Landform do, and it was the same with Wisley. And we dropped out of doing the Wisley Garden, and because it was both of them. It was to do with time frames, and they were the Wisley one we could have done, but we couldn't do it in the time frame. But the Tower of London one was just too big for us. Yeah. And I said, this is more civils. And I just said, actually, and I was delighted that Landform did get to do them. So I think those projects are the right ones for them.
Yeah.
And they didn't fit within what we do. So again, it's knowing your limitations and knowing your boundaries. Yeah. I think it's absolutely critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you practice what you preach. And in the words of Harry Enfield, know your limits, as he used to say all those years ago, and manage the risk, which is important. So anyway, great, David. It's been a pleasure talking to you and listening to your pearls of wisdom today. If people do want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with Dodd?
How long did you try and get in touch with me for?
Only about 6 months. I bumped into you at the Grosvenor at the Barley Awards, and you said, text me. Just text me. Text me. So is that the right way? Texting?
I think, by all means, if it's about work, ring the outdoor room. It's you'll speak to the wonderful Jules or Mark.
Brilliant.
And they'll take any inquiries. If you want to just ping me a text or ping me emails, I'm terrible at reading emails. I'm putting my hands up. I am terrible.
It won't be emails.
Just give me a call on my mobile. This goes out public. I don't know if I want everyone having my mobile number.
No.
But I don't mind.
They can contact you through the office, and the office can then give phone numbers. We don't want to be,
She'll force me to. So Jules is very scared. I've kicked her out the office actually while I'm doing this. Oh. So she'll force me to ring people. She's very good at that.
Yeah. Okay then. So how can they get in touch with her? If we
just either inquiries at the outdoor room .co.uk or
right.
I don't mind giving. What's the phone? 01403 865 285.
There we go.
All international inquiries. It's. Honestly, I don't mind giving out my mobile.
Brilliant. Well, it's been great. Thanks for that. I appreciate that, and your openness to help people. Obviously, you it's all part of who you are as part of your Go Landscape project or initiative. Also suggests so. Forever a teacher.
It's vital to Go Landscape.
That's it. And forever a teacher, David. You know, your parents will be very proud. All right, I'll let you go. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Nick.
Cheers, David.
It's been great fun.
Pleasure. See you
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast. To get in touch and see how we can help you with your business by emailing nick@nickruddle.com.